שבוע
Okay.
טוב.
כן, אני לא יודעת אם, oh, I always forget
בוקר
English.
טוב.
שבוע tov, that's right.
Yeah.
And so nice to see everyone. And please let me know, again, because it's been taking a while to get on the internet, let me know if you don't hear me well or if it gets cut off, because now we put in another system in our house so that, again, if this one doesn't work, I can switch to the other one. So I'm waiting for you to let me know.
Oh.
And without further ado, we're going to get started. And yes, indeed, we're going to speak about an Agadah having to do with rain. Very, very appropriate. As we know, there are numerous Midrashim and Agadot that really relay many rain stories. But what's interesting is that the rain stories aren't just about rain, and they're not even just about tefillah. They're really about certain personalities. And that's why we're going to select a few, certainly during this Be'ezrat Hashem rainy season, and help us understand the personalities here in the Talmud. And this week, what I'd like to do is actually place upon all of you, now that you already have a sense of how the Gemara very much, again, the Tanaim, want us to see personalities in their time, and certainly subsequently in our time, as related to characters of earlier time, namely the time of Tanakh. I'm going to ask you how the personality that we're going to focus on this week, which personality or personalities in Tanakh does this one remind you of? And what does this have to say? I'm even going to give you a hint that in preparing this, I was thinking particularly of this week's coming Parsha, of Parshat Toldot. So I want you to think of that in your minds, but then again, if you have other ideas as well, to please feel free. So without further ado, we're going to get started. I'm going to share with you right now the story of Abba Chilkiah. Okay, I see that it didn't share. One moment. Share screen. Here we go. Okay, we're going to take a look at this story, the story of Abba Chilkiah, and a little bit of background as to who Abba Chilkiah was. If you're looking at the source, again, in Gemara Tanit, Afchat Gimel, maybe some of you remember this from how we began this year with the story of Choni HaMa'agel. And if you remember Choni HaMa'agel, who was a little bit, we'll call him even not only off the beaten track, if you recall, but he draws circles, right? Which already is an expression of, the non-square type of personality. He's literally and figuratively out of the box. So that was Choni, who, if you remember, brought us rain with a very interesting, almost chutzpahdik, if you recall, rain dance. And there we saw how Chazal go out of their way, even within the story, to tell us that he reminds us of Chavakuk HaNavi, the Navi who, with a lot of chutzpah, said, Hashem, al mishmarti amoda bet yatzba al matzor. Hashem, I'm not moving from here until you give me an answer as to questions of theodicy. So too, again, Choni is going to say that, and Shimon ben Shetach, who's actually the leading halachic figure, the Nasi of the Beit Din at the time of Sanhedrin, he's the one who accosts Choni and says, this is not the normal realm of halacha. Rather, how do we generally bring rain? Tfilat ta'anit, tfilat ta'anit. So that's the background for our story as well. Again, prayer and fast. That's the halachic order now that we no longer have Nevi'im. And if you remember, by the end of the story, we also saw, therefore, how Choni is compared to Eliyahu HaNavi, who also seems to tell God what to do with regard to rain. Don't bring rain. Yes, bring rain. So what's interesting is that this story begins with a little bit of genealogy and wants us to know it's right after the series of stories that we learned with regard to Choni HaMa'agel. The Gemara tells us, Abba Chilkiah ben beno shel Choni HaMa'agel haya. Now again, these are actually stories, as you're going to find in Hebrew, which means that these are really Tanaitic stories. So if Choni was living during the time of the second generation of Tanaim, so Abba Chilkiah is already the fourth generation, which means that there isn't a Beit HaMikdash. Again, during this time, there are Chachamim, but we're living even, under Roman persecution. Let's just remember that. Again, the center for rabbinic institution is in Yavne during this time period, and Abba Chilkiah is the grandson. Now, if you remember, this is the natural continuation of the previous story where we heard of Choni, remember, who went to sleep for 70 years, and he comes home and he says, is Choni's son still alive? And they said, no, but his grandson is. And instead of going to see his grandson, he went to the Beit Midrash. So now our sense is this is the grandson. or at least this is one of the grandchildren, and born to Choni during his period of absence. So on one hand, there's going to be, we'll see, you're expecting there to be some type of, genetic material that's in his blood that's going to perhaps bring rain in a miraculous manner like Choni HaMa'agel. But keep this in mind that this is already 2 generations later, and we already know that Choni had a very difficult time relating to the passing of generations. For him, everything was very black and white. In this time period, it was very difficult for him to adjust to a different time period. So let's meet Abba Chilkiah. Now, what's interesting is that some Parshanim actually relate him to Chilkiyahu HaKohen, who lived during the time, again, a Kohen under Roman persecution, who stands up to the Romans, but we don't really have a strong source for that. The only other time that Abba Chilkiah is mentioned in the Gemara is in the context of explaining a pasuk in Tehillim of Tzur Tamim, again, God being a raka, a bastion, and then the continuation is Tamim Poalim, someone who acts with God, again, in a manner, just somehow, again, in a manner that is just, in a manner that is going to be, again, in accordance with Hashem. So we see that Abba Chilkiah is going to be seen as a paradigm of someone who is tamim, someone who is pure, someone who is poel tzedek. That is the other term associated with him, someone who acts with justice. Okay. With that background, we now hear about but here the story tells the most. Hello?
דני, את יכולה לחזור? לא שמעו רגע לכמה דקות. Could you go back for like two sentences there? Now it's better, yeah.
Other than
no, you're fading in and out. Shani, רק אצלי?
No, Shani, it's not good. You're fading in and out. We don't hear you.
No, you're fading in and out.
Okay, thank you. I was waiting for that because that's been, okay, this is better, right?
Yeah.
This is better now? Okay, don't laugh, but we have 2 connections now in the house, one that's better for uploading and the other that's better for downloading. So once I connect, this connection is actually better. Okay, so let me know if you can, everyone can hear me now. Okay, Mitsuyan, Esther and Bella, thank you. Okay, here we go. So all we knew about Abba Chilkiah again is that he is a poel tzedek, is that he acts in righteous ways. Now we're going to hear the more elaborative story of Abba Chilkiah, his personality, and definitely in the context of bringing rain. Here we go. Abba Chilkiah ben beno shel Choni HaMa'agel haya. Yeah, we already know this. Again, Abba Chilkiah was the grandson of Choni. So already, again, the Chachamim are putting in our minds there's an association between them. Okay, what seems to be the most obvious association? So this seems to have been a common practice, not just with Choni, but with Abba Chilkiah as well. When the world needed rain, the Chachamim would send out, literally, mishagrim etzlo. They would send out to be with him. In other words, they would send out Chachamim. Right? They would send out people, emissaries, go to him, and it seems that this was a regular process, that they would go to him and he would ask for rachamim and geshamim would come. Now, when you're reading this, what are you thinking? Oh, yeah, because he's Choni's grandson. And it seems then, because he's Choni's grandson, that he has these magical powers. He can bring rain like no one else can bring rain. He can bring rain in this manner, again, as no one else. And therefore, this is something very automatic. Okay, what we're going to see is that Chazal, that's how Chazal are portraying the story, meaning that was more or less the way that people understood how rains would come. You just go to Abba Chilkiah, don't worry, he's going to daven, v'yardu geshamim. In other words, you would think that there's something magical about him. But then this story is coming to tell you, no, that was really a distorted understanding of Chazal. This is really how Abba Chilkiah brings rain. Let's take a look. Pam achat nitzrach ha'olam geshamim. Once upon a time, the world needed rain. Shigru etzlo shnei talmidei chachamim sheyibakesh rachamim. So again, this is the standard. They did the standard. Shigru etzlo shnei talmidei chachamim. They sent, meaning chachamim from Yavne, sent two talmidei chachamim to Abba Chilkiah so that he would ask for rachamim, he would ask Hashem for mercy, so that there would be rain. And it seems that this was common. They would go to his house and he'd be there generally, and they would say, look, you know, Abba Chilkiah, we really need rain. And somehow, okay, as far as they knew, there was rain. Here we now hear of the background story. Once they came, they came to his house and he wasn't there. Now, in the world of Chachamim, the bayit means one of two things, either literally your bayit megurim, the place where you live, or the Beit Midrash, or the house of study. And what's interesting is that particularly after the Beit HaMikdash, we don't find so many people still working the land, right? Because the Romans are persecuting them and they're going from one place to the other. But sure enough, again, by him it seems, in Chachamim, and even in Choni terminology, after the Bayit, where would you go next? You would go to the Beit Midrash. But apparently there's no Beit Midrash, right? Again, that's where we'd expect Halchu etzlo leBeit Midrash, but Halchu etzlo lesadeh. But no, Abba Chilkiah is not a man of the Beit Midrash. He's not like Choni. He's in the Sadeh. He's a farmer. He's in the fields. Umitzauhu shehu oder. And sure enough, they found him, literally, this is interesting, being an oder. Anyone know what's an oder from the word of Adarim? He's dealing with? He's a shepherd. He's dealing with his flock. That's exactly a true oder. So there Rashi says he's fixing things for the flock. He's building fences. Again, because also oder means to surround. So basically he's tending to his flock. So notice this. He's in the sadeh, but he's not working the ground, right? Rather, he reminds us he's a shepherd. Wow, that's like, you know, ancient profession over here. Natznu lo shalom. They said hello to him. So bidyuk. So what's a ma'ader?
Ma'ader is like a shovel, a spade.
Bidyuk.
No?
So that's exactly why Rashi says bidyuk. So oder can either, that's why I mentioned, oder can either be adarim, like Sarah said, tending to his flock, or oder, or shoveling the ground, right? So he's an oved adama and a roetzon. Right, so Rashi actually combines it and says that he's working the ground, he's doing something for the flock. But it seems that, again, he's basically both, right? Again, it doesn't tell us explicitly what he's doing. What we know, though, is that he's a man of the field. So it seems that he's tending to flock and he's working the ground, right? So, and we're going to see this. Natznu lo shalom, v'lo hispir lahem panav. Notice this terminology. They said hello to him. Velo hisbir, you know, like a lekabel kol adam besever panim yafot. Lo hisbir means he doesn't even give them any face. Lo hisbir lahem panav. He doesn't even turn to them, right? It's not as if he doesn't, again, smile, or he doesn't even greet them, right? Lo hisbir lahem panav. He doesn't give them countenance. That's the term. Again, very strange. La erev. So they're just like waiting for him there. La erev liket etzim. So again, what is he, right? He's dealing with a flock and he's working the ground. And by evening time, he's getting etzim together. And now again, that term, vayat ta'un ha'etzim. He would then take the etzim, v'hama'ader al ktefo. See how confusing this is? What are Chazal telling us? What is he? Ma'ader al ktefo. But we also said ma'ader means like to surround or to collect. So that's why Rashi says it seems that he's making some type of fence. But who's this for? Is it for the field? Is it for, again, for the flock? And now he's taking the eitzim and he's collecting them on his shoulder. So again, a lot of idur going around. Basically, he's a man of Again, very physical things, right? He's dealing with wood, and he's dealing with flock, and he's dealing with the ground. And then he takes all these eitzim and he places it al ktefo achat, talito al ktefo shniya. This is strange. Where does he place this bundle of wood? He places it on his bare shoulder, even though there's a talit, there's a garment on his other shoulder. So you would think that it would be a little more comfortable for him to put it on the garmented shoulder, but he doesn't. Kol haderech, that's a strange thing. Number 2, right? He doesn't greet the chachamim. He puts the eitzim on his bare shoulder. Kol haderech lo hayano ilman alav. The whole time he's walking barefoot, he doesn't put on his shoes. Kshigia lamayim na'alav. Generally, when you take off your shoes, he puts on his shoes, specifically when he comes to water. Kshigia levein kotzim. And then after the water, he got to an area where there's thorn bushes, ubar kanim. Higbia biadav. Generally, we would keep our clothing down so that it would protect us from the thorns. But that's when he lifts up his garments, right? Which means that the thorns are going to, instead of him being protected, they're going to scrape his skin. Kshigia, so that's number 4, that's strange. Kshigia la'ir. Now they're finally in the city. Yatsa ishto kshihi mekushetet. This, by the way, is one of the most famous scenes for teaching women that it's okay to be provocative. His wife comes out, and I hope you don't mind me saying this way, in a somewhat provocative manner, right? She's all adorned. Now notice, by the way, the contrast. He's like, he's barefoot and, half his clothes aren't on, and she's coming out adorned and, looking very, I'm going to say, aristocratic. Again, here's the next strange thing. They get home, and his wife goes into the house first. Now, again, that's fine, but please remember that there are Talmidei Chachamim there. Also strange. First his wife, then him, and only then nechnasu hachachamim. And it seems that he's not even relating to them at all. Then he sits down. Finally, yashab l'sod v'lo amar l'chachamim bo usadu. And just to highlight all this, he sits down to eat, and he doesn't invite the chachamim to join him in his su'udah. Next strange phenomenon. Paras pat latinokot. He then starts dividing up the food, literally the bread, amongst the children. Lagadol natan prusa achat. To the elder one, he gives 1 slice, v'lakatan shtayim. And to the younger one, he gives 2 slices of bread. Where's the pishnayim for the bechor? And forget about, inheritance right now. Isn't the older one, he's older, so he needs more nourishment. Amar Abba Chilkiah li'ishto. Then Abba Chilkiah says to his wife, and it seems that the Chachamim hear this, Yodea ani shelo bo etzli hachachamim ela b'shvil geshamim. Right? Now we go back to the beginning, right? Which is, this was the standard. He tells his wife, and it seems that these Chachamim came only so that there should be rain. Let us go. Na'amod v'na'aleh la'aliyah u'nevakesh rachamim. Now, and this is fascinating, only now do we hear about the formula going back to the beginning. This apparently is the way that it always works. Whenever they come, it says yivakesh rachamim. This story highlights that they thought it was he who was bringing the rain. Now we hear, no, what's the formula? He turns to his wife. Now, time out just for a minute. How did the story begin? Abba Chilkiah is Choni HaMagel's grandson. And therefore we thought, and basically what the Tanam are saying, and this is a beautifully structured story, they're basically presenting it, you're supposed to think that Abba Chilkiah has the Choni powers in bringing rain. Actually, the story is highlighting, no. We're going to see that who actually brings the rain, not Abba Chilkiah, rather his wife. And you're going to see then why I say that the story, there are so many parallels with this week's Parsha, so keep this in mind. And I left out the Tanakh part on purpose so that you'll fill in this time. But let's take a look. He comes and he tells his wife, Na'amod v'na'aleh la'aliyah u'nivakesh rachamim. Let's go up to the roof and we're going to ask for rachamim. So all of a sudden we hear, wait a second, this is not what we thought. We thought there were some, genetic powers, but actually this is his wife who's not related to Choni HaMa'agel. It's not in the family. No. When it comes to bringing rain, it's not about yichus. It's not about the family, even though you thought it was, and the Chachamim thought it was. And they thought it was all Abba Chilkiah. Now we hear no. It's he together with his wife. And then he says, it's also not about us. It's about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe, not that we will appease God, but maybe God will be appeased. And then the rains will come. And apparently this is his formula. And let us not think that it's good for us, meaning that let's remind ourselves that we're not the ones who have the power. Rather, it's in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're just appealing to Hashem. Amadhu bizavitzo. So they're standing in opposite corners, one in one corner, one in the other, ubikshu rachamim, and they're asking for rachamim. So here's the story where the Chachamim are telling you, because he wasn't home, right, we accompanied him all the way out to the fields, and now we have a clearer picture of the whole story. Kadam ba'ala anan mitzad zavit shel ishto. The Chachamim are witnessing, wow, when they go up together, the anan, actually, the cloud of rain, starts to amass in his wife's corner. Kashe yarad amar lahem. And then when he comes down from the Gag, he said to the Chachamim, Baruch hamakom shelo hitzrich etchem la'Abba Chilkiah. Baruch Hashem, that you didn't need Abba Chilkiah. And look, what do you know? It's already raining. Amru lo, they said, Abba Chilkiah, yodim anu shakshamim besutcha yardu. We know, this is the formula, we know that the rains are coming in your zchut. They didn't come until you davened. However, we are so confused. Ela yefaresh lanu ma dvarim elu shehim tmuim lanu. But explain to us what we never saw before, right? Now we had a picture of the behind the scenes of Abba Chilkiah's life. Can you explain all these things going back to the beginning of the story? So let's see. Mipnei ma kshenatanu lacha shalom, when we first came out to you and we said hello to you, lo hisparta lanu panim. You didn't even turn your face to us. Amar lahem sachir yom hayiti. How do you like this, by the way? Gana, as we're learning the story, look outside. Isn't this beautiful? Beautiful. Gana, mamash, it's in the zchut of our learning right now. Amar lahem sachir yom hayiti. It's because I'm an employee, and therefore, ba'amarti lo et batel, I can't waste even a second, right, and turn to you, meaning I'm being paid per hour, and therefore, I'm being paid per day. I don't have time, meaning it's wrong for me to turn to you and to say, hello, how are you? Because that's not right, meaning just to say hello, meaning we should engage in conversation, but that would take away, that's on my, employer's wages. So no, lo et batel, I couldn't do that. Okay, fine, that we get. Mipnei ma hayita ta'un ha'etzim al katev zo. Okay, we saw you were working. Okay, that's fine. But then when you took the eitzim, why did you put it on katev zo vatalit al katev acheret, on your bare shoulder, and not on the shoulder, again, on one shoulder, whereas the talit was on the other shoulder? So he explains, talit she'ula haita. Again, notice this. He really is not a man of many means, right? He even explains, and we're going to see the contrast with his wife. Notice this, that talit. Hello, Shelley. This is so wonderful. How are you? Welcome back. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Beautiful.
Sorry for coming in late. I just got the link. Thanks so much.
No, phenomenal, phenomenal. So sure enough, the Chachamim are asking all these behind the scenes questions. Why did you put the firewood or the wood on your bare shoulder? And he says, because the talit wasn't mine. Again, the garment on the other shoulder was borrowed. Almanat kach hishilu li, ve'almanat kach lo hishilu ali. It was borrowed so that I could wear it. It wasn't borrowed for another purpose, meaning it wasn't borrowed as a shoulder pad. Basically, the firewood would have ruined the talit, and it doesn't belong to me. It's borrowed. All of a sudden, I wonder, what are you saying about this Abba Chilkiah personality? You're saying that what appears to be very inconsiderate and very strange actions are actually extremely considerate. Again, it's just that you don't know all those people who aren't in the story. You don't know about his employer. You don't know about the person who lent him the garment. And all the more so then, Abba Chilkiah's sensitivity towards them and towards their materials, towards their objects. So then can you explain to us, how about your shoes? Why were you not wearing them the whole time? And then finally you get to the water and you put them on. He says, Kol haderech ani ro'eh. Why should I wear my shoes out? Again, the whole way I can see where I'm going. It's only when I get to the water, I don't know, are there scorpions? Are there thorns? Again, in the water, I don't see, so I have to protect my feet. But otherwise, I can skip over, all the different obstacles along the way. So here, this isn't about, again, sensitivity to other people's objects, even to his own. In other words, this is a very frugal person. This is someone who does not want to waste away his shoes, which are probably his one pair of shoes, right? This is someone who doesn't want to get someone else's garment ruined, even if it would make his life significantly easier. And now we're going to see a very similar explanation given to why is that when you got to the water and you when you got to the kutzim, when you got to the thorn bushes, you actually picked up your clothing, right? Wouldn't you think, based on if you put your shoes on when you got to the water because you don't want to get hurt, then why when you got to the thorns did you lift up your garments? He says, because this can be fixed in one takes a long time to fix and the other doesn't take a long time to fix. What does he mean by that? My skin will get scratched and it will be fine. Again, whereas if I put my pants down, then again, my pants are going to get torn, and that's going to take a long time, again, to fix, right? Then I have to sew it up, and then it's never going to be the same. Again, it's okay if my legs get a little scratched. Okay. Mipnei ma, which tells us all the more, right? Taking very care. This is probably his only pair of pants. Mipnei ma kshi gata la'ir. So now, okay, that's like, the country mouse. Okay, we understand country mouse now. But why when you came to the city? Again, strange things happened also. Yatsa ishtacha mekushetet. Here, it seems that based on everything you're saying, that you're so simple, right? You have one garment. You're so careful with your garment. And your wife comes out so adorned. And he says, Kedei shelo etein einai b'isha acheret. She does that because that's more important. In other words, the family value is much more important than any self-respect that I would have for myself. Basically, all the extra money that we have goes to her wardrobe not so that she can look beautiful, again, in herself, and not because of her materialistic desires. It's so that I won't look after other women. It's so that she'll be more attractive for me. And by the way, this is a very, very important statement. In Chazal, here we see that women should go out of their way to make themselves beautiful for their husbands. Now, keep in mind, the reason I said she's not just coming out like adorned, she's coming out in a very provocative manner. And he says that I won't look at other women. Now, keep in mind, she wasn't expecting the Chachamim, to come that day. So, Yatsa ishtacha mekushetet. Notice this. Again, family values. Okay, but once you knew we were there, why did your wife go in first? And then ata achareha, and then you went after her, and then only then did we go in. Come on, really, Abba Chilkiah, we're Talmidei Chachamim. He says, Mishum she'enatem bedukim li. He says, because I don't know whether I can trust you. In other words, I don't know you, right? You're not inspected by me. What's he saying? And that this terminology is used to test someone's state of morality, right? He says, my wife went in first and I didn't want you going in after her, again, because I don't know what type of man you are. And she's really beautiful. So I went in after her. I don't know whether you're going to be able to withstand her. Atem, you're not okay. I don't know who you are yet. Okay. And then, ksheyashafta lisod, mepnei malo amarta lanu bo usuadu. Okay, so we understand that. So first, okay, you had to go in with your wife. We get it. But why didn't you invite us when you sat down to eat? Just invite us to eat with you. You saw that we were with you in the field all day. He says, Mishum shelo hayta piti meruba, because I don't have a lot of food. V'amarti al yachziku li chachamim tova b'chinam, and I don't want al yachziku li chachamim tova. I don't want the chachamim, and just again, having a tova b'chinam. In other words, I'm not going to invite you if I really can't give you what to eat. I really didn't have what to give you to eat, which, by the way, we see he had meager rations over here, that once again, the family comes first. He's going to focus on the family. He says, I couldn't invite you and then not give you. Mipnei ma natata letinok. Okay, so then you gave your own family, but you gave the younger one, tinok gadol prusa, you gave your tinok gadol, you gave your older son only one slice of bread, and you gave the younger one two. He says, because the older one has been at home all day. He's been on his Zoom shiurim. He could have gone to the pantry. Again, he's in Kita Zayin. He's not back in school yet. And so he could have, again, taken and availed himself to food all day. But the younger one, he's in Kita Gimel. He's back in school, and we didn't give him any lunch to take. He's been in the Beit Midrash. He hasn't eaten all day. So we're going to give him 2 slices of bread. Okay, now we understand everything until now. And this is really fascinating, right? Did everything that he said make sense? 100%. And what does it show us? It shows us, and the reason why I like to call it country mouse and city mouse is because that famous folk story of the country mouse coming to visit the city mouse, he doesn't understand the strange ways of the city mouse, right? And the city mouse comes to visit the country mouse, and he doesn't understand, right? How can the country mouse enjoy his food of corn every day? How can he like running through the fields? Again, isn't that boring? And it's the Talmidei Chachamim from the city who are coming, and they're getting a whole new Musar Shmuz in the chinuch of someone who is going to bring rain. And what we see is that it's not his scholarship that brings rain. What the story is coming to tell you is what's so special about Abba Chilkiah. Again, basically his values, his personality, that even when it doesn't look as if he's a sensitive person, he's actually extremely sensitive, a loyal employee. He is not going to take advantage of other people's garments, just as he's also going to protect his own garments. And when it comes to his wife's garments, that's because of higher arching values that he has. And when it comes to his family versus his Talmidei Chachamim, he's going to put them first. And he's also going to relate to the needs of each one. So now they understand this. And now I can picture them nodding one towards the other. Okay, again, we understand why this is a special person. Okay, but he's so special that mipnei makadam va'ala anan mitzad David ishracha v'achar kach mitzad David shelcha. You're so great, Abba Chilkiah. Why then did the cloud of rain start in your wife's corner and not in yours? And he says, mishum shahisha mitzuya babayit. He says, because there's something even greater than what I do. She's at home. And which we already see. Number one, that's enough even. She has the family values. V'notenet pat la'ani ukrava hanato. So this way, when an ani comes, she's able to give him ready-made food, and he enjoys immediately. Vani, but when an ani comes to me, I can only give him the money. Vani noten ma'ot lani ve'en hanato krova, which means now he has to go to the supermarket, and now he has to go buy something, and then he has to prepare it, and then he can finally enjoy. So it's in the schut of my wife, who gives prepared food. Wow. Again, look at this. That's the end of the story. Now we understand the beginning of the story. Again, what the Chachamim didn't understand. The story isn't for Abba Chilkiah, it's for the Chachamim. Abba Chilkiah ben beno shel choni hama'agel haya. And what's the story coming to tell you? But that's not the reason why rains come, because they actually come from someone who's not in the family. So what you think at first glance is actually not the reason. Meaning, don't judge the book by its cover or by its yichus. Again, the second line also, generally they just come to him, to his house, and next thing they know, Bikesh Rachamim Yardu Geshamim. Comes the story to tell you each line is going to be contested. Has nothing to do with the fact that he's Choni's grandson. But actually, generally, he's not at home, he's actually in the field. And this is what the story is coming to tell you. And I don't know exactly what he does, giving us a sense that he does whatever he needs to do in order to bring food home. And you think that he's the one who asked for rachamim and then geshamim come. And now you see that it's not about him. It's about these midot. It's about the values. And it's not even ubikesh rachamim. He goes up together with his wife and they ask for rachamim together. And they don't make a big deal about it whatsoever. Bi'ardu geshamim. And you think, rain just comes. But actually, it comes in a particular way. It comes from his wife's corner because of her tzedakah that she gives. And therefore, what we really see is that tefillah, again, is not about, again, the tefillah itself, and it's not the magical power of tefillah. It's about the person who's davening. You know, all those Baal Shem Tov stories of, the boy who doesn't know the alphabet, so who doesn't know how to read, but he just knows the letters of the alphabet. And he's the one who says, Hashem, take the letters and compose the most beautiful tefillot. Or the little boy who only knows how to play his flute of reeds. And the Baal Shem Tov says that's the tefillah that was able to open up Sharei Shamayim. Again, the point is it's not about the tefillah, it's about the mitpalel. It's about the values of the person davening. It's about how we actually...
Shani, it reminds us also of the story of Mar Ukva.
Yafeh ma'od, yafeh. So we're going to discuss Mar Ukva stories. We're going to get to Mar Ukva and his wife, yafeh, and the burning coals, mitzuyan, yasher koach bakim. Again, that's another story coming up. Again, very, very nice. Again, that she, in a very similar fashion, again, she would give his feet were in the end got burnt. Her feet didn't get burnt again because she also gives prepared food to the aniyim. Beautiful, beautiful, and yafeh. But this is particularly a rain story. Again, very, very appropriate, and it's interesting because. Again, I was just reading a story of Rav David Feinstein, who passed away last Friday night. And they were telling a story that he lost a son who had a married son and also a granddaughter. They said they never saw any pain on his face. They said, but when he would daven, you'd be able to feel his pain and davening as he would take out little ptakim with everyone's name on it to say Tehillim. And again, let's see this. The Mesachat the Mishnah tells us, Moridin lefnei hativa. That's why when it comes to representing us in tefillah, you have to look also for the right mitpalel. It's not just anyone who's just going to represent us. It should be a zakein, ragil, biyesh lo banim, someone who has family values, someone who is a father of children, ubeito rekam, right? Who doesn't really care so much about materialistic things. Again, it's about the shleimut of the mitpalel and not necessarily, again, the tefillah itself, again, which is very, very powerful here. Okay, so can anyone tell me, thinking through this in the last few moments, any parallels to any Tanakh personalities, any biblical personalities?
This is our parsha.
This is our parsha. Thank you. I said, okay.
But here they listen to the wife, and in our parsha, Rashi says, Tzaddik ben Tzaddik.
Beautiful, beautiful. So as soon as really I was thinking, what would be an appropriate Agadah to share for this week? I said, okay, definitely a Geshem one. But here's a Geshem one that's related to this week's parsha, the very beginning of the parsha, when we hear about again, the toladot of Yitzchak when he's first married at age 40, and now it's already 20 years later and they don't have children. Again, so what happens? Pasuk Aleph, Vayatar Yitzchak laHashem lenochach ishto. Where's this idea of, okay, when you really need something, you dive in on at different corners, right? The husband on one corner, the wife in another corner, right? This famous Abba Chilkiah story. Where did he learn this from? He learned it from this week's parsha. He learned it from the biblical personalities. He learned it from Yitzchak and Rivka, that they each davened, and they davened apart, right? Each one, right, coming with their own zchuyot, ki akarahi, vayater lo Hashem. And here is another example of sometimes they're both answered, obviously. Vatah Rivka Yishto, Rivka in the end conceives, but Hashem answered him, meaning it's important for us to ask, why is the cloud starting in her corner? Why is Hashem answering Yitzchak? So sure enough, Rashi addresses this and he quotes Chazal who asked this question. They say because Yitzchak was a tzaddik ben tzaddik and Rivka was a tzaddik bat rasha. Right, so here the irony is that, again, you could think, you see, Yitzchak had more zchiyot because of Abraham, because of Yichus. I believe this story of Abba Chilkiah is coming to tell you, don't think always that it's really about Yichus, right? What does it mean, tzaddik ben tzaddik? It doesn't mean because of the zchuyot of Abraham. It means that because of the fact that he was Abraham's son, so he had, again, he was a little more sensitive to certain things, as opposed to Rivka that you're going to see in the Parsha, really did inherit some of the sly, mischievous, subvertive methods of Bethuel and Laban. So again, basically our story is coming to tell us it's really not about yichus. It's not about the family. It's about your own values. And sometimes you really have to look and see. Abba Chilkiah says, my wife has more zchuyot because of what she does. She gives ready, prepared food as opposed to me. I just give the money, right? So it's important for us to see the parallels between the biblical and the Tanaitic personalities. The Tanaim, and we're going to see this in future stories as well, very often are actually coming to show us almost like to fix the phenomenon that you may think of from the Torah. Don't think that Yitzchak is really better than Rivka. It's not about yichus. It's about your masim. It's about your midot. Excellent. Any other parallels to this week's parsha? So that's the main one.
Even before that, we see Yitzchak was also Ish Sadeh. He brought Rivka into the Ohel, and
very nice. Beautiful.
Ohel. There's so many parallels to this.
So many parallels. Yitzchak is the Abba Chilkiah. I really do believe that in Tanakh, meaning we don't really understand him, right? Meaning he's not a revolutionary like his father. Avimelech also doesn't understand him. Like, wait a second. Again, you said she's your sister, but you're acting like, a married couple. And again, he's I would say the most elusive out of all the avot, out of all the patriarchs, and yet. Again, what you see is that each one of his actions is actually very premeditated, right? He's acting and he explains to Avimelech exactly why I did this. And then, he calls out B'Shem Hashem and is successful in his own way, right? Abba Chilkiah is different. He's an Ish Sadeh and he's the Roetzon. That's why I think the Yitzchak is again, very much reminiscent here in the background of the story. He's both a person of the field, Abba Chilkiah. He's also a shepherd. Again, very much reminding us of Yitzchak. And Rivka, again, with her own culture and her own ways, right? And notice, what does he say? So that I won't see another woman. Yitzchak and Rivka are the only of the Avot and Imahot that only have eyes for each other, right? That there's no other woman in the story. There's no rival wife. Right? That's just the two of them. And maybe that explains what we hear at the very end of Parshat Chayisara, Tehilo Lisha Vayehaveha. Right? And all the Parshatim point out, he's the only one of whom it says that he loves his wife, Vayehaveha. Again, when he first brings her in. Later on, we're going to see Yaakov loving Rachel, but there are other wives involved in the story. Here, this Ahava is really a singular love, which is very beautiful to see.
There's also a beautiful midrash that says that when they were davening together, Yitzchak said, may this be the only wife I want to have children only from Rivka. And she said, I only want to have children from this tzaddik, which is beautiful. Also because it shows their relationship that a lot of times we don't understand.
Very nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. Can someone share with me another parallel to this week's parsha? Again, how about the value? So not only the family value, how about the value of material possessions that we see that Abba Chilkiah really, meaning he takes care of the material possessions, but he doesn't have so much of, right? So remember, by the end of the parsha, Yaakov is running away. He has nothing, but basically he comes to Beit El and he recognizes, okay, Hashem, you're going to be the one to take care of me. He ultimately is going to become the employee by Lavan, and he's going to tell Lavan, I don't waste any of my time, right? The days I watched, the nights I watched, and any other ideas as well that what you see isn't necessarily what you get?
The two
see
brothers.
Any of those?
You have
two brothers. What do you mean by that?
You have
the Bechor. You see that? Beautiful. Everyone see that? The Bechor, the Chacham say, shouldn't the Bechor get 2 slices of bread? And he says, no, you don't understand. The younger one is the Talmud Chacham, right? The younger one, here we see, that's exactly it. Meaning this story reminds us that, again, the Bechor isn't always the one who has to get the double amount. Yafeh ma'od. And at the same time, again, what does Yitzchak realize? And I think this story is really sharing with us that entire component. Yitzchak already gives us the message that what you see is not always what you get. He says, Hakol kol Yaakov v'hayadayim yedei Esav. And I think that he knows what's going on. You're the inner sense of who you are, you're Yaakov. But you know, every once in a while, you know how to don the Adayim of Esav. You know also how to act as Esav. And that's an important skill, right? And basically, that's actually part of the bracha. If you can do that, Yaakov, then you'll succeed, right? With Hakol kol Yaakov v'hayadayim yedei Esav. So it's true, some Parshanim see that as a critique, some Parshanim see it as Yitzchak really being confused. But I believe that this story is coming to tell you Yitzchak isn't confused. He is one of those chachamim coming from the side, and even though he's blind, he sees more than you think. He says, I understand you. Again, I know who you are. I know why you're talking this way and why you're done. Hakol kol Yaakov. As long as your inner voice is the Yaakov voice, even if hayadayim yedei Esav, we can understand everything through Hakol kol Yaakov. Even if you don't greet, even if you do strange things, hayadayim yedei Esav. Again, as long as the value is the voice of Yaakov, your inner voice, then you deserve the brachot. And in that merit, the rains come. Right? And I think this is a beautiful, beautiful story then of Abba Chilkiah that basically highlights numerous messages from this week's Parsha. So I want to, on that note, wish you a wonderful week. Enjoy the rain, enjoy the brachot, and make sure to hold on to that kol of Yaakov, to those values of family, the values of tefillah, the values, the midot of not wasting time and not wasting other people's, again, material possessions either. And Bezrat Hashem, and that's zchut. We'll be able to, and especially with the zchut of providing tzedakah in the most readily accessible form, we'll be able, be'ezrat Hashem, to be zocheh, not just for our own personal tefillot to be answered, but the tefillot that help benefit all of Am Yisrael.
Amen. Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov, Chodesh Tov. Yes, on that note, next week we start talking already about Hanukkah stories. So get ready, that's going to be the theme for the next 3 weeks, Be'ezrat Hashem, Lekrata Chag Urim, a lot of fire and a lot of, again, a lot of history. And the question is, what are the parallels? Just wait and see the parallels to Tanakh, and really, really remarkable ones, and ones that I think not only highlight messages of Nevuah, but highlight various themes that are extremely relevant today. Okay, Shavua Tov. So nice to see the screen full here of wonderful, wonderful people.
Tanya, it's other about that what you see in life isn't always exactly what you think.
Exactly. What you see is not what you get, and what you see around you is not really what's going on. Vidyok, vidyok. And so depictive in this week's Parsha. Mamash, everyone thinks they know what's going on. No one. Basically, we, the reader, are the only ones who really know what's going on behind the story.
So depicted in the politics.
Can I just add something that I thought of when, although it's not written, when he had the wood on one shoulder and the talit on the other, what sprang to my mind was Torah v'Avodah.
Yafeh, Yafeh ma'od, which is very foreign to these Chachamim. And Esther with her Bnei Akiva, again, yeah, she's 100% right. And true, that the Chachamim came like, wow, like we didn't know this. You know what? You're an Ish Sadeh, and you're an Ish of the Eder and the Idur, and you're the one who's bringing the rain. And yes, he has, but don't worry. It doesn't just say there was a beged, but actually a talit. Beautiful, beautiful, Esther.
And the other thing I also thought of, was that he was doing all those, like looking at tending to the flock and seeing to the wood as it was a kind of bitachon in any way, bitachon b'Hashem, that the rain was going to come, because those are things you need to do for agriculture before,
Beautiful.
you know, I guess,
Beautiful.
before it
Thank
rains,
you.
whether it's bringing the sheep in
I'm so happy you said this. I can't believe I forgot to go back to it.
There.
Thank you. Thank you. You all said at the beginning, what's he doing? What's this idur? So that's exactly it. It's something with the flock. It's something with the ground. Something with, again, some type of fence, whatever it is. It seems that that's exactly it. He's preparing the ground and the flock for rain, meaning he has this. And
that's what I thought.
Meaning the Chachamim have to come and ask him for rain, but he knows what they need because he needs it too. And he's confident that it's going to come.
Oh, he's so good, you know.
Exactly.
You know, he's doing what he has to do.
Viduk. So they place their confidence in him, and he places his confidence in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but at the same time everyone's doing what they need to do. That's exactly, and basically he's telling the Chachamim, it's really not about me. It's not about me. It's about these midot, right? And if you have these midot, you can do it too. You know, you don't have to be Choni HaMagel's grandson to bring rain. Beautiful. Esther, that's a phenomenal point. And by the way, the fact that he has a talit, right, also makes us think that how's he davening? Just like you see by the end of the story. I'm sure he davened shacharit, you know, batikim with sunrise out in the fields, like Yitzchak. Vayitze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. This is the only tefillah of the sadeh, right? He's in the middle of nowhere. And the Ramban points out that, yes, just being part of nature is what inspires him. I think of, you know, Abba Chilkiah as one of the paradigms of, you know, Corona tefillah. You know, he goes up to the roof, you know, because there isn't a big Knesset. There isn't a big midrash in his community. He's using everything around him, and that's what inspires him. That's right. Beautiful. So even though, again, halachically, there's going to be an idea, daven in a shul, in a big Knesset, but he understands that, you know, there are drastic times, and it doesn't preclude us from davening. It inspires us even more to daven. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Vidyok.
Oh, there's the parallel with Yitzchak.
All the parallels. Vidyok, Abba Chilkiah is Yitzchak Basadeh.
Again, yeah.
100%. 100%. I think that's why we can. Truth is, we can keep on, you'll see, like, look at the story. There are many, meaning his relationship with his wife, with his children. Now, there's a katan and a gadol. Again, he loves remember, Yitzchak loves the gadol and Rivka loves the katan, meaning even the terms that are used. I think clearly Chazal are telling us, look at the Yitzchak parallel. 100%. Yafeh ma'od. Vayater, the taf, vayader, the adira, the atira. Again, a lot of parallels. So yes, so even though I'm going to leave this year now to start my next year in 1 minute, Anna, you're going to all continue to think about the parallels and appreciate how fascinating and how timeless these messages in fact are. Shavua tov v'chodesh tov.